A young healer named Keyaru is recruited by Princess Flare of the Jioral Kingdom. Keyaru is a kind, hardworking, indecisive, and easygoing young boy. He's also quite optimistic in the sense that he's naive enough to think he's going to be recruited to save the world. At his very core, he indeed wishes to be a hero and make sure that no other kids have to grow up without their parents. Unfortunately, everything he thought he knew about people turns out to be a complete mystery. He was indeed a valuable asset, but the kingdom failed to see him as an actual person. The prejudice against the healing class was insane. Little by little, he was losing it. He even tried to escape, but failed. That's when Flare decides to get him hooked on a certain something. She thought she had absolute control over Keyaru. Among the other two heroes, one of them is a woman named Blade, while the other is a grown man named Bullet. Even so, Keyaru's body was always abused in one way or another. As time passed by, his hatred for Flare and the others continued to increase, so much so that he eventually developed a resistance to whatever they were feeding him to keep him high all day every day. But because he knows he's still no match for the heroes, he continues to pretend that he's still high. Surprisingly enough, Flare's sadistic sister named Norn realizes that Keyaru isn't as broken as the other heroes think, but instead of telling the others, she decides to use him to entertain herself. The time came when his abilities were needed to help them defeat the Demon Lord, but after the other heroes are done and dusted, Keyaru finally lets out his insane thirst for revenge. All of that endless hatred starts reeking off his body. He defeats the cute Demon Lord no problem, but as she fades away, she realizes how all this time the Demon Lord was trying to protect something or someone. He acquires her abilities and also gains the Philosopher's Stone. In that moment, Keyaru was truly indispensable, more terrifying and overpowered than the Demon Lord could ever hope to be, but instead of simply taking revenge on his abusers, he decides to take things even further beyond, right to the very beginning of where it all began. Just as Princess Flare watches in disbelief, terrified at what was about to happen, Keyaru commences an unconventional healing spell which allows him to revert time itself. Right then, in that very moment, everything goes back to how it was 4 years ago. Instantly, Keyaru wakes up in his home back in the village. He can't really remember anything, but he knows he just had an extremely dark and brutal nightmare. A sweet lady named Anna asks him what happened, but he's unable to say much and simply tells her that he had a nightmare. She has been like his older sister ever since he lost his parents. He also keeps hearing a weird voice in his head that is constantly telling him something about a star spirit. Anyway, it's going to be his 15th birthday in a few days, and so it's time to get serious about his future prospects. But he just goes out to harvest some apples instead. Keyaru then decides to follow the voice directing him to go into the forest. She pops up out of nowhere and gently kisses his eyelids. For some reason, this gives him the Eyes of the Spirits. It's essentially an ability that allows one to see through all the things in the universe. Or to be more precise, he can now see through everyone's stats and abilities. And now that he's regained his memories, he starts planning in advance. When he's chosen to be a hero at his 15th birthday, he also starts taking in all sorts of toxins and potent stuff in order to develop a resistance. A few days later, Princess Flare comes across his village to escort their new healing hero to the royal capital of the Jioral Kingdom. Keyaru could have started enacting revenge right away, but he doesn't, because this version of Princess Flare isn't guilty yet. Furthermore, when he arrives in the capital, he immediately knows that his current stats aren't good enough to completely destroy the other heroes. So he decides to let history repeat itself. Only this time, he will suffer that abuse and humiliation intentionally. Following this, he's called to restore the amputated arm of a comrade swordsman named Kureha. He does that cleanly, but pretends to pass out in order to avoid being seen as competent. This gets on Flare's nerves, and she orders the court magician to confine and control the use of Keyaru's abilities no matter what. Realizing this, Keyaru knew that Princess Flare is still the same, and so the journey of his revenge begins. Whenever he heals someone, he intentionally gets overly dramatic about it and starts swearing to never heal again. It puts too much of a strain over his mental and physical constitution, and so they imprison him and supposedly get him addicted to stuff. They have no idea that he's already developed a resistance. Time begins to pass and Keyaru continues to heal more and more warriors. For a stupid period of time, he kept healing and acquiring new abilities during the day while suffering abuse and torture during the night. Finally, he becomes strong enough to hold his own against anyone. One day, when the king is absent, he escapes the prison and then changes his appearance to that of Flare's imperial commander named Leonard, and tells Flare that Keyaru said something which cannot be ignored. But when they are both alone, he swiftly kills her bodyguards and then uses his spell to take away all of her magic prowess. Just when she's turned into a normal, defenseless girl, he reveals who he really is. She immediately tells him that everything was for his sake, but Keyaru ignores this nonsense and tells her that they'll play a game. He'll break her fingers one by one, and if she doesn't shout until all of them are broken, he'll release her. However, even after breaking all of them, he simply heals the fingers and repeats. It doesn't take long before she's forced to shout, but hearing this only gives Keyaru the incentive to be more ruthless. That's right, everything she's done to him, he starts doing to her. Before long, she's completely and utterly broken. But that's when Keyaru slightly alters her appearance and changes her memories. He names her Freya, and from this moment onward, she is his personal slave. Keyaru then makes one of his dead bodyguards look like Flare and then escapes with Freya. He also changes his own appearance and renames himself as Keyaru the Healer. And folks, that's what we're going to be calling him from here on out. Alright, now that he's done with Flare, he sets his sight on the two other heroes, namely Blade and Bullet. He remembers how things went each night. Now before he goes after Blade and Bullet, Keyaru and Freya visit a lawless city where only the criminals thrive. He realizes that the water is contaminated, and so everyone who drinks it ends up with a terrible illness, though he instantly creates a cure using his blood and sells it to a merchant. He also tells him that there's more where that came from. As long as the merchant continues to share half the profits, he's willing to continue the supply. Next up, he visits a slave trader where a female ice wolf demi-human named Setsuna catches his eye. He knows that the only reason this wolf girl is still alive is because she wants revenge. He gets her and tries examining her memories. As it turns out, she wants revenge against the Jioral Kingdom because they're the reason why all of her kind may end up as slaves. He then tells her that he'll make her stronger if she'll tell him her actual name. That's right, boys, a proper 8 hours worth of sleep will make you stronger. Finally, after they sleep, once again, she tells him her true name. It's Nayuta. Meanwhile, back in the capital, Flare's sister Norn suggests that it was Keyaru who killed Flare. Now remember the swordsman whose arm was restored by Keyaru? Well, she's actually among the few decent human beings in the kingdom. She confronts Keyaru because she thinks that he attacked the soldiers in the village for no reason, but he quickly defeats her and then shows her the memories of all the despicable acts these soldiers performed on Setsuna's people. This serves as a shock and makes her pass out. She never knew her kingdom was this inhumane. Keyaru then reveals himself as Keyaru, then tells Freya to pretend to be Flare and explain just how corrupt the Jioral Kingdom is. By the time they were done, they had completely won her over. So much so that she also volunteers to be one of his sleeping bodies, and after just one night's worth of sleep, she's already head over heels for him. Freya and Setsuna get jealous, but their sleeping adventures together continue. Meanwhile, Leonard from the kingdom had attacked and captured Keyaru's village. He realizes what's going on and decides to send Kureha to investigate while he infiltrates Leonard's squad. Unfortunately, even Keyaru wasn't ready for what happened back in his village. As it turns out, Leonard disguised himself as Keyaru and proceeded to do despicable things to his childhood friend, Anna. As hard as the physical pain must have been, the mental torture of it was even worse. This piece of trash was actually looking like Keyaru while he did all that to her. After learning what happened, Keyaru was straight up burning with rage. He immediately captures Leonard, transforms him into a woman, and then brainwashes all of Leonard's own troops into doing whatever they wanted to him. It was a full-scale sleeping fest. After he's done with them, he immediately goes back to Anna. Fortunately, she was still alive and was genuinely happy that she got the chance to see the real Keyaru one last time. But even though Keyaru desperately continues to perform recovery spells, it was too late and she dies in his arms. Once again, something inside Keyaru gets broken. When Kureha returns after the investigations, she tells them that the kingdom is planning on executing all of the villagers since they supported Keyaru. Keyaru knows that the one pulling the strings is Norn, but he wasn't going to take any of it. He shows up at the time of the execution and begins to slaughter the executioners together with his girls. Unfortunately, the villagers were already poisoned, so even though he put a halt to the execution, he couldn't stop them from dying. In the end, even the audience turns on the executioners after Freya pretends to be Flare and reveals the darkness of the kingdom. But still, they could only save one of them, and it's a little boy. Keyaru knows that the boy blames him for the genocide of his people, but he wasn't going to stop. He leaves the boy to that merchant and then leaves for the city of Bernice after being informed of the situation through Kureha. Looks like Norn and her troops are heading for that city, but another reason why he wants to go is because the future demon lord resides there. On their journey, Keyaru, Freya, and Setsuna set up a camp. Eventually, they reach the city of Bernice. It's a place unlike anywhere else. All races live in harmony with each other. They then visit a restaurant where they come across a black-haired little girl named Eve Reese. She's the demon lord Keyaru defeated, but at that time her hair was completely silver, and she was much stronger than she is now. Realizing this, Keyaru understands that she isn't the demon lord yet. In fact, the current demon lord is wary of her race, and wants all the people of the Blackwing tribe eradicated. He tells her that defending a certain incoming attack should be her top priority. otherwise she'll die. She does as she's told and survives, but some random bounty hunters manage to paralyze her. Luckily, Keyaru and the others kill those hunters and save her. He then explains how he met and defeated her in the future after she became the Demon Lord. He also offers to protect her until she becomes the Demon Lord, and in return, all he wants is the heart of the current Demon Lord, also known as the Philosopher's Stone. She's skeptical but agrees it's a good idea to stick with him since she doesn't want to die. That night, she wakes up to some sounds. She's embarrassed, even more so, when he provokes her to join them and prove she's a grown woman. She turns completely red but manages to turn down the offer. Although when they're having breakfast the next morning, Freya and Setsuna roast her for not joining them. Keyaru then once again reminds her that he wants the Philosopher's Stone after she becomes the Demon Lord. He also wants her to be the originator of peace between the humans and the demons. Following this, they talk about her abilities, and she explains that she can summon a legendary bird named Caladrius. It's a demonic bird that spreads diseases. However, the summoning process requires her to travel all across the world. Later, they wreck a few more bounty hunters and leave them to be eaten by a beast. And then Freya buys herself a new magic staff. Her previous one was broken since it couldn't hold her magical prowess. Keyaru improves her staff and then decides to improve the other equipment in the store as well. The store owner, named Carmen, is satisfied. He rewards him with some cash as well as a mithril sword. In the morning, Keyaru monitors Norn's army from a distance and ends up noticing that the hero named Blade is with her. This infuriates him, but he has no choice but to retreat for now because another hero named Hawkeye managed to sense his presence. During the night, Blade abducts a local girl, but this doesn't go unnoticed. When Keyaru sells some potions to the same store owner, he tells him about what happened to that girl. He decides to disguise himself as a young girl named Keyaru, asks Freya for makeup, and then heads out to bait Blade. That night, Blade shows up at the bar once again to get herself a new girl. She's fascinated by Keyaru and starts offering her a drink. Keyaru plays hard to get, but she instantly kisses Keyaru and also transfers a sleeping potion which was in her mouth. Keyaru then pretends to fall asleep. Everything was going according to plan. Blade picks her up and is on her way back to her room. While they were traversing through a quiet street, the father of that other girl she killed tries to attack her, but Keyaru knocks him out cold to save his life. But this also revealed the fact that she wasn't an ordinary girl. Blade uses her sword to attack and knock out Keyaru. She then takes her to the room and ties her up. She was going to have Keyaru all to herself for the night before eventually killing her, but the moment she finds out she's a dude, the shock is unreal and she immediately starts vomiting. But Keyaru is now in the perfect spot to take his revenge. He stabs her with a poisoned dagger, and when she tries to reach for her weapon, he stabs her again. This time, Blade passes out. He reads her memories and realizes that Norn plans to wage war on Brenisa in 3 days. Sometime later, Blade finally regains her consciousness, but her legs are paralyzed. Keyaru tells her that if she can survive these 3 men, she gets to keep her life. However, it was too much and she couldn't move at all. And those 3 men, on the other hand, weren't even sane anymore. They start by destroying her body and then eat her alive. Her divine weapon reverts back to a gem and Keyaru takes it. He then reverts back to Keyaru and meets Hawkeye. Hawkeye invites him to join his army after taking a look at the potions he sold to the store owner, but he simply had no interest. However, this interaction helped him realize that Hawkeye is still too strong for him. He then uses that gem he acquired to form a weapon related to immortality. It's called Georges, and it's a clawed gauntlet that can heal the user's injuries in real time. Finally, it's the day of the war. Norn was searching for Blade all this time with no luck. In the end, she discards her as worthless and starts gathering the citizens of Brenisa. There, in front of them, she states that the demons of Brenisa used brainwashing magic to make the humans accept them. Conveniently, one of her own soldiers, disguised as a local, tries to attack Norn because, of course, that was her plan. And so she uses this as an incentive to command her army to kill everyone they see. Keyaru had become good buddies with Carmen, the store owner, and when he sees Carmen getting killed, he gets genuinely angry and slaughters a great number of the enemy soldiers. Freya, on the other hand, pretends to be Flare once again and launches a hologram of herself in the sky. She proceeds to state that the other races are not their enemies. The soldiers should stop their assault right away, and conveniently, they listen to her and stop their attacks. Well, she's supposed to be Norn's older sister after all. This also confuses both Norn and Hawkeye, but that confusion gives Keyaru the opportunity to attack them. He swiftly kills Hawkeye and then apprehends Norn by knocking her out. He reads her memories and realizes that she was the one behind the attack on his village. Now, Keyaru had a different plan for Norn. When she wakes up, she sees Freya acting like a dog, and as you can expect from a dog, she starts licking. It was going to continue until the morning. And when they're done, he erases her memories and renames her Ellen. Then, after Kureha returns from another investigation, he introduces her to Ellen. This calls for a celebration, and so Freya, Setsuna, Kureha, and Ellen have a sleepover together with Keyaru. Eve still hasn't graduated from just watching. Later, he explains that they'll all travel to help Eve tame the demonic bird Caladrius, but before they set out, he stops by his friend Carmen, the store owner's grave, to pay his respects. Meanwhile, the King of the Kingdom orders Bullet to go and stop Keyaru. Bullet is excited because he gets to do Keyaru again, but Keyaru knows that he'll never know a peaceful life until he gets his revenge on Bullet as well. Well guys, that's where the season ends. But of course, Keyaru's revenge on the entire Jioral Kingdom is still in the beginning. As always, if you liked what you saw, subscribe to the channel. I'll be uploading a lot of videos just like this, so I'll see you at the next one.